Big Shaq was fueling up in silence when he spotted a girl wiping oil off her hands, while a group of rich teens circled her, filming, mocking, calling her just a mechanic's kid. One even shouted, "No one like you ends up anywhere." The video went viral for all the wrong reasons. But what no one knew, that girl was family, and Shaq wasn't just watching, he was already making a call. What he did next didn't just silence the bullies, it launched a movement that left the whole country speechless. Stay locked in, because this story flips faster than an engine rebuild. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The bell hadn't even rung yet, and Jania was already getting stares. She stepped out of her uncle's pickup, wiping her hands on a rag, grease still smudged across her knuckles. Her jeans were faded, her boots scuffed, and her black hoodie bore the logo of Ray's Auto Garage, stitched proudly on the chest. She hadn't had time to change after the early morning oil change shift. By the time she walked through the front doors of Oak Ridge High, the whispers started. Is she serious? Smells like motor oil in here. Did she just come from fixing a car? Jania didn't respond. She kept her head down, heading straight for her locker. But even then, she felt it. Phones subtly pointed her way. A flash, a giggle. Then a group of girls walked past, pinching their noses dramatically. She really thinks that's cute? One of them scoffed. This ain't a pit stop, sweetheart. She tried to laugh it off, tried to focus on the calculus notes tucked into her backpack. But by lunch, it was out of her hands. A sound from behind. Click, swipe, laugh. Jania turned around and froze. Across the table, Tyson, the loudest guy in school and a walking TikTok addiction, was showing a video to a group of students. In it, she was caught mid-yawn, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, grease on her jaw. The caption, "When you fix cars but can't fix your life." The laughter was instant, loud, sharp, cruel. "Going viral, mechanic girl," someone shouted. She stood up fast, bumping the table, her tray clattering to the floor. Someone filmed that too. Face burning, she rushed out of the cafeteria, pushing open the door to the nearest stairwell. Alone now. The hallway was empty, but the sound of laughter still echoed in her mind. She slumped against the wall, pulled out her phone, and stared at the video. 12.7K views. Comments. "Bro, she built like a wrench. Someone get her a toolbox and a therapist." Her fingers trembled. Her jaw tightened. She could fix an engine blindfolded, but she couldn't fix this. Not alone. She scrolled through her contacts and paused and tapped a name she hadn't called in a long time. The phone rang once, then a deep, familiar voice answered. "Jania?" Her lip quivered. "It's happening again," she whispered. He didn't ask for details, just said 5 words. "I'm on my way, kid." Jania wiped her face, stood up straighter, and looked at her phone. This time she hit record, just like Shaq taught her, and whispered, "Let's see how they like the real show." The wind howled outside the garage, rattling the windows like it wanted in. Inside, the hum of a half-fixed Chevy filled the silence. But Jania wasn't under the hood today. She was slumped on the tool bench, scrolling through comments that hadn't stopped since last night. "Garage girl caught slipping. Bet she smells like engine oil and regret. LOL, she probably buffs cars better than her GPA." Each line hit harder than the last. Her Uncle Ray glanced over. "You sure you're okay?" She nodded, but the redness in her eyes told a different story. Then her phone buzzed. One text. "Shock. You ready to record yet?" She hesitated, then called him. He picked up immediately. No hello, no small talk. "Tell me what's going on," she exhaled. "They posted videos. One of them made a TikTok calling me toolbox trash. It's all over school." Silence. A heavy breath. "Just wait," Shaq said, "and record everything. Trust me." "But for what?" she asked. "It won't stop. They don't care who I am." Shaq's voice stayed calm. "That's the thing, Jania. They don't know who you are. Yet." She looked down at her hands, still stained with oil from this morning's carburetor job, and closed her eyes. "It just feels like I'm losing." "You're not losing, you're loading," Shaq replied. The call ended with a click, but those words stayed with her. She followed his advice. The next day at school, she didn't fight back. She didn't cry. She just recorded. When Tyson dropped a fake wrench in her backpack and said, "Here for when your daddy's car breaks down," she caught it. When the girls laughed behind her in science class, she caught that too. By nightfall, her phone had 7 videos, unedited, raw, real. After school, she didn't say much. She just walked into the garage and got to work. She needed the noise of engines, more than air. But that night, just as she was packing up her tools, her uncle walked in, wiping grease from his hands. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual but failing. "You might want to come in early tomorrow." She looked up. "Why?" He grinned. "Someone special's coming to the shop." Jania stared. "Who?" He just winked. "You'll know when you hear the engine." And outside, somewhere far off in the dark, a low growl of horsepower echoed through the streets. The garage was quiet, too quiet for a Saturday morning. Jania stood at the workbench, tightening a valve cover bolt, still half expecting her uncle's special guest to be some retired NASCAR driver, or maybe one of his old racing buddies. Nothing crazy, but then she heard it, a deep, velvety engine purr that didn't belong to anything in their usual clientele. Sleek, smooth, almost arrogant. It rolled closer, tires crunching softly against gravel. The garage door began to rise. Daylight flooded in, and there it was, a black Rolls-Royce Cullinan, spotless, gliding into the shop like it owned the block. Tinted windows, no plates. The car came to a gentle stop. The engine cut. The silence felt like it was holding its breath. Then the driver's side door opened. Big Shaq stepped out, all 7'1" of him, towering in a tailored black tracksuit, fresh kicks and shades so reflective you could see your whole day in them. Jania froze, socket wrench still in hand. Her uncle didn't even flinch. He leaned against the lift and grinned. "Told you someone special was coming." Shaq scanned the shop like he was back in a locker room before a championship game, calculating, cool. Then his gaze landed on Jania. "You must be the girl with hands tougher than half the league," he said. She blinked. What are you doing here?" He stepped forward and held out his fist. "Came to see the truth for myself." She bumped it, stunned. Her heart pounded louder than any engine she'd ever worked on. Shaq turned to the garage's corner, where a slim guy in all black stood holding a red cinema camera. "You rolling?" Shaq asked. The cameraman nodded. "Good." He looked back at Jania. "Show me what you can do. Right here. Right now." Jania hesitated, then wiped her hands on a towel, straightened her back, and walked over to the half-assembled 1970 Chevelle they'd been rebuilding for months. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. Shaq smiled. "Whatever you'd do if no one was watching." So she got to work, hands steady, movements precise. Tools clicked, parts shifted. Shaq didn't say a word. He just watched, arms crossed, head nodding slowly. After 5 minutes, he turned to the camera guy. "Cut it." He walked back to Jania and lowered his shades. "You just embarrassed half the trolls on the internet." Then he looked back at the camera crew and said, "Let's give these haters something to watch." And just like that, Jania's real story had its ignition. Shaq didn't waste time. Within an hour of leaving the garage, the video was live. No trailer, no teaser, no fluff, just raw footage. Jania with her hair tied back, face smeared with a light streak of grease, knuckles dark from work, tightening a timing chain like she'd done it 100 times. The engine roared to life at the end, and the look on her face wasn't boastful. It was calm, grounded, real. Shaq's caption, "Don't mess with hustle. Garage Queen." It hit like a sledgehammer. By midnight, the post had over 2.1 million views. Comments flooded in like wildfire. "She's a beast with a wrench." "This girl's tougher than my ex and smarter than my mechanic." "Not even gonna lie, I'd let her rebuild my whole life." Memes spun from freeze frames. Edits with dramatic music. TikTok stitching her work with praise. Overnight, Jania, the same girl who got laughed at 2 days ago, was trending across 3 platforms. At school the next morning, the hallways weren't silent, but the laughter was gone, replaced with glances, awkward ones, curious ones. In first period, her phone buzzed, over and over, but one message stood out. A DM from a girl in her math class, no greeting, just a screenshot. A group chat, dozens of students, Tyson's name at the top. "Wait, that's Jania in the Shaq video? This is gonna backfire hard. Yo, delete everything from yesterday, everything." "Too late, people are tagging the school." Her fingers froze over the screen. Another text came in. Her uncle. "Turn on the TV." She stepped into the teacher's lounge, eyes locked on the mounted flat screen in the corner. Local morning news. And there it was, B-roll of Shaq stepping out of the rolls. A voiceover saying, Shaquille O'Neal surprises a small-town teen mechanic, sparking an online movement. Then a clip of her, laughing nervously while adjusting an alternator bolt, played with a headline across the bottom, Garage Queen goes viral. She stood motionless, heart pounding in her ears. Wait, is that you? A staff member asked behind her. She nodded once. Another teacher walked by, holding her phone. My husband just sent me this, she said. He said you're the realest person he's seen online in years. Jania didn't know what to say, but in her pocket, her phone buzzed again, this time with a message that made her jaw drop. From an unknown number. Hi, this is Rachel from Channel 4 News. We'd love to speak with you about your story. But before she could respond, another buzz came in, a forwarded video from school, and in it, Tyson, panicking. We're screwed. She's with Shaq. Jania didn't even touch the front steps before eyes found her. Only this time, they didn't roll or narrow with judgment. They watched, really watched. Phones weren't pointed at her in secret anymore. They were lowered. Faces weren't twisted in mockery. They were stunned, confused, some even impressed. She walked through the main hallway of Oak Ridge High like a spotlight followed her. But it wasn't the walk that had changed. It was the weight in it. No slouched shoulders, no nervous glances. She moved with quiet purpose, like someone who had nothing left to prove. Yo, that's her. She's the girl from the Shaq video. Garage Queen just walked past me, bro. The whispers clung to her like fog, thick and buzzing. But Jania didn't flinch. She adjusted her backpack strap and kept walking. At her locker, she felt a presence pause beside her. She didn't look, but she didn't need to. Tyson, the boy who started the storm, the one who laughed the loudest. Now, he was silent, eyes on the ground, no smirk, no snide comment, just a clenched jaw and footsteps that retreated faster than they arrived. Yeah, Jania muttered under her breath. That's what I thought. She was halfway to third period when a voice stopped her. Jania? She turned. It was Mrs. Caldwell, English teacher, mid-40s, usually indifferent to everything but Shakespeare. I saw the video, Caldwell said, eyes wide behind thick glasses. Was that Shaquille O'Neal? Jania gave a tight nod. The teacher's voice dropped to a whisper. You know him, she smiled faintly. Something like that. Caldwell blinked like she didn't know whether to scream or faint. By lunch, it was undeniable. Jania wasn't invisible anymore. She was a name, a brand, an event. But just as she opened her tray and sat down at the far end of the lunchroom, her phone buzzed again. She expected more memes, maybe another round of comments, but this wasn't that. Incoming call. Ray, uncle. She picked up. Hey, you sitting down? He asked. Yeah. Well, don't get up. Local Channel 8 just called the shop. Her brow furrowed. Okay. Why? They want to do a full segment. You and Shaq. Front page. Prime time. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. The cafeteria noise blurred around her, but one sound broke through. Another buzz. This time, a notification from Shaq. Let's show them what real looks like. And somewhere across the city, a camera crew was already loading into a van. Destination, Ray's Auto Garage. And the girl they thought was just a joke? She was about to become a household name. The fame came fast, but so did the shadows. By Monday, Jania's name was in headlines. Her face was plastered across local news thumbnails and car enthusiast blogs. The shop had a wait list 3 weeks long. Ray started joking about adding velvet ropes. But in the corners of the school halls, the whispers had changed tone again. She's lucky, not talented. Probably a PR stunt. I heard Shaq pays kids to pretend. The source? Tyson? Of course. With his ego bruised and reputation shattered, he wasn't backing down quietly. Instead, he launched a new campaign. Less loud, more dangerous. Whispers in classrooms. Direct messages sent to group chats. Proof that Jania faked everything. Then came the video. It dropped at midnight on a private account. Grainy footage, cut to show Jania struggling with a rusty bolt. Edited with a voiceover that mocked her tone. Another clip showed her glancing nervously towards Shaq, then immediately cut to him nodding, spliced like he was giving her cues. Caption, mechanic, more like actress. Paid by Shaq. At first, the comments were mixed. Some laughed, Some defended, but the seed was planted. By morning, the vibe had shifted again. People weren't pointing, they were doubting. In second period, a classmate leaned over and said, "You really do all that garage stuff? Or does Shaq coach you off camera?" In the cafeteria, Janiyah overheard someone say, "She probably couldn't tell a carburetor from a coffee maker." Her chest tightened. She didn't cry, but she stopped smiling. When she got back to the garage that evening, she didn't even say hi to Ray. She just went to the far lift and got under the chassis of a half-restored Mustang, trying to disappear into the smell of oil and steel. Ray noticed. "You all right?" he asked. She wiped her forehead, not answering. "Talk to me, kid." She finally looked up, eyes rimmed red. "They're back to not believing me, saying it's all fake, that Shaq scripted it." Ray shook his head. "They don't doubt you because of what you can't do. They doubt you because you already did it." Her phone buzzed. A new message. "Shaq. Heard about the clip. Let's go bigger." She blinked at the screen. "Read it twice." Another message came in right after. "Be ready tomorrow, 3 p.m. Bring tools." She stared at the text, heart thumping, because she knew one thing for sure. Shaq didn't do small, and whatever bigger meant, the world wasn't ready for it. The notification hit like a bomb. "Shaquille O'Neal has started a live video. You're tagged." At Janiyah built it, Janiyah stared at the screen, heart racing. She hadn't expected it to happen so soon, and definitely not like this. She was still in her coveralls, hands stained from rebuilding a carburetor that afternoon. Her Uncle Ray gave her a nod from across the shop, like he knew what was coming. The live stream started in the middle of Shaq's garage. Sleek black walls, chrome tool cabinets, and a spotlight that made the place feel like a championship arena. Shaq stepped into frame, holding his phone steady. "All right," he said, his voice low and steady. "Since some people out there think our girl Janiyah's the real actress of the year, I figured we'd go live. No edits, no scripts, just tools." He turned the camera. Janiyah was already standing by the stripped-down engine block on the lift. She swallowed her nerves, wiped her palms on a rag, and nodded once. "Let's do it." The chat exploded immediately. "OMG, that's the Garage Queen. Is this real time? This is better than Netflix." For the next 20 minutes, she worked with complete focus, torque wrench in one hand, gasket sealant in the other. Shaq didn't interrupt. He just narrated like a proud coach. "You see how she's lining that up without looking? That's experience. That's skill. Not something you fake in a TikTok. Every click of a socket, every twist of her wrist. It was real and the world saw it." Over 6 million people tuned in. Shaq refreshed the feed and laughed. "Y'all still think this is staged? You're watching history." Then came the comment that changed everything. "Rev Motors official. We want to sponsor her. DM us now." Janiyah looked up from the engine, blinking at the screen like she'd misread it. Shaq caught it too. "You see that?" he said. "That's called leveling up." The screen flooded with reactions. "She earned that. That's the realest thing I've seen all year. I'm buying whatever she builds." Ray stepped into frame from the side, his face stunned. "You're gonna need a bigger garage." Janiyah could barely speak, but her hands never stopped moving. Just before the live stream ended, Shaq leaned into the camera with a grin. "This ain't the last time y'all see her. We just opened the hood." And in the background, Janiyah tightened the last bolt, smiling like someone who had just taken back the narrative. The email came late at night, subject line bold and simple. Invitation, National Youth Engineering Expo, Washington, D.C. Janiyah stared at her phone for almost a full minute, her fingers trembling above the screen. At first she thought it was spam, some prank, another setup. But the letterhead was real, the link was real, and when she clicked it, her name sat right there among 10 others. Selected participant, Janiyah Thomas, Auto Mechanics and Innovation. She exhaled slowly, disbelief catching in her throat. Ray walked in from the kitchen holding a sandwich and stopped cold when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, half panicked. She turned the screen toward him. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then he let out a low whistle. "Well, damn, you just made the big leagues, grease girl." The next morning, the story was everywhere. School Facebook pages, local morning radio, even a shout-out from the city mayor on Twitter. Janiyah's face in coveralls was now the face of local pride. And when she walked into school, the silence was deafening. Students who once laughed now parted like water. Teachers whispered in the halls. Tyson, leaning against his locker, froze as she passed, phone still in his hand. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Janya didn't need the stares to know everything had changed. The ones who mocked her now watched her like she was someone they didn't fully understand. In between classes, her phone buzzed again. It was a voice message from Shaq. Just saw the news, baby girl. National stage. You earned this. Don't let anyone dim your shine, all right? This ain't luck. It's work. She closed her eyes and smiled, replaying the words in her head like armor. But the victory didn't last long. At 2:13 p.m., the intercom crackled to life across campus. Attention students and staff. Please report to the auditorium for an emergency assembly. Attendance is mandatory. This is in response to a recent incident. Heads turned. Whispers followed. What incident? Is this about the live stream? Maybe it's about that fake video. Jania felt her stomach twist. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow, too loud. Ray's voice echoed in her mind. The bigger the light, the bigger the shadow. As she entered the auditorium, she saw the principal pacing near the podium, and beside him, holding a manila envelope and whispering with urgency, was Tyson's father. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The truth cracked open in the most unexpected way, during third period chemistry of all places. Ms. Delaney was lecturing about chemical bonds when the classroom door swung open and the vice principal entered with a tight expression. He walked straight to Tyson's desk. Mr. Blake, he said firmly, bring your bag, now. The room fell silent as every head turned. Tyson looked around, confused, defiant. What did I do? Now, the vice principal repeated, not answering. By the end of the day, the school was buzzing. Whispers turned into rumors. Rumors turned into receipts. And finally, those receipts turned into facts. Tyson had created a fake Instagram account under the name @AutoFraudExposed, the same account that had posted a highly edited video of Jania messing up during a routine repair, claiming she was a fraud, a fake, a plant. But that wasn't the worst part. He also used the account to send her anonymous threats. Go back to the garage, grease girl. You're just a prop. Bet Shaq drops you when the likes dry up. Each message had come from a school IP address. IT tracked it. And by 4 p.m., Tyson was sitting in the principal's office, arms crossed, parents pacing behind him. Jania sat across the table with her Uncle Ray beside her. His arms were folded, jaw tight, saying nothing. The principal's voice was sharp. You didn't just bully a student, you endangered the safety of this school's reputation and a young girl's future. Tyson's mother looked desperate. It was a misunderstanding. He was just being immature. Ray scoffed. Immature is pulling a prank. This was targeted harassment. Then the door opened again, and in stepped someone nobody expected to see. Big Shaq. His frame nearly filled the doorway. His face was calm but unreadable. He nodded once at Ray, then looked directly at Tyson. You know, he said, voice low. You could have just apologized, but you kept pushing, kept lying. And now, he stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the table. Inside were printed screenshots, timestamps, and copies of every message. Tyson's father stood. We'd like to resolve this privately. Shaq tilted his head. So would I. But first, Jania deserves the floor. Jania looked up. Her voice was steady. I didn't ask for fame. I just asked to be left alone. But you made sure I'd never walk this school in peace again. You made me your target. The principal turned toward Shaq. What do you want us to do? Shaq didn't flinch. I want accountability, he said, and it starts right now. You don't get to break people and walk away. Shaq's voice thundered across the polished walls of the school board conference room. It wasn't loud, but it carried, heavy like the truth no one wanted to say out loud. Students passing by slowed near the glass windows, trying to listen. Phones quietly came out. Recording buttons lit red. Tyson sat hunched in his chair, face pale, eyes darting between the principal and his furious father. The superintendent had her hands folded tensely, and Jania sat calmly beside Ray, arms crossed, head high. Shaq didn't pace. He stood grounded like a statue. This isn't just about Jania, he said, pointing toward her. It's about what you all let happen. A girl works hard, gets mocked for having grease on her hands, and instead of stepping in, you let it become a school-wide spectacle. He looked around slowly, locking eyes with every adult at the table. You teach respect by enforcing it. You build community by protecting the ones who stand out, not punishing them for it. The principal tried to interject. Mr. O'Neill, we are working on a disciplinary policy. No, you're reacting, Shaq cut in. What you need is culture change. Outside, more students gathered. The crowd in the hallway was growing. Nobody dared to interrupt. They were listening to something rare. Truth, spoken without filters. And let's not act like this is just bullying, Shaq continued. It's classism. It's elitism. The kind that tells kids they're only worth something if they show up in designer sneakers instead of steel-toe boots. Inside the room, silence held like glass. Outside, camera phones stayed steady. Jania didn't just earn this moment, Shaq said, lowering his tone. She survived to get here. The real question is, what are you going to do now? So the next girl like her doesn't have to? Nobody spoke. Then Ray reached over and squeezed Jania's shoulder. As Shaq stepped out of the room, students parted like the Red Sea. Some cheered. A few clapped. Most just stood stunned. Jania followed behind. Him, not speaking. She didn't need to. Her name wasn't just trending now. It was respected. When she got to her locker, she spun the dial and opened it casually. But something unusual was taped inside. A folded piece of paper. She pulled it down and opened it slowly. I was wrong. I should have stood up for you when I had the chance. Signed, Mia, one of the girls who had laughed at her video the very first day. Jania stared at the note in her hands, heart thudding. And then, out of nowhere, a voice behind her whispered, "You inspired more people than you think." When the school's office called Jania to ask if she'd speak at the end-of-year assembly, her first instinct was to say no. She stared at the email for hours that night, rereading the formal invitation like it was written for someone else. Someone braver, someone cleaner. She still had grease under her nails from an alternator job she finished at midnight. Shaq had smiled when he saw her hesitate. You don't have to be perfect, he told her. Just be real. That's what got you here. So she said yes. And now, standing behind the curtain in the gymnasium, heart pounding, palms damp, she wasn't sure she'd made the right choice. The principal stepped up to the mic. This year has tested us, but it also showed us something powerful. One of our students reminded us what resilience really looks like. Please welcome Jania Thomas. The applause was loud, surprisingly loud. Jania took one step, then another, and walked out in front of over 600 students, staff, and parents, wearing her garage boots, dark jeans, and a black hoodie with oil smudges on the sleeve. Her curls were tied back. Her face was bare. No makeup. Just truth. She stood at the mic, adjusted it once, and looked out across the sea of faces. Many were familiar. Some had mocked her. A few had defended her. But none of them expected what she said next. I wasn't supposed to be here, she began, voice quiet but steady. I was supposed to be invisible. The girl who worked on cars after school while everyone else went to the mall. A few chuckles echoed, but they weren't cruel this time. When you walk into a place smelling like gas and engine grease, people assume things about you. That you're dumb, poor, or worse, unworthy. She paused, scanning the crowd. But what they didn't know was that I was learning to build things, to fix things, and most importantly, to stand for something. She told them about the bullying, the viral post, the edited video. Her voice shook once, but she didn't back down. I'm not the only one who's been underestimated, judged for where I come from, or what I wear, or how I speak. But I'm standing here now because I didn't let that define me. Shaq sat near the back of the gym. His arms were folded, but his eyes, they shined. Jania took one final breath. This isn't just my victory, she said slowly, locking eyes with the girls in the front row. It's every girl who's ever been underestimated and still showed up anyway. The crowd erupted, but backstage her phone buzzed, and the caller ID simply read, Detroit Auto CEO. It started with a billboard. Right above I-95, across from the biggest dealership in the city, Jania's face stared down at the traffic below, chin lifted, eyes fierce, grease-stained hands gripping a socket wrench like a trophy. Across the top, in bold steel-colored letters, powered by passion. Beneath it, sponsored by Detroit Auto. The campaign launched nationwide. Auto shops, tech schools, even STEM centers started sharing her story. News anchors called her America's Grit Girl. Comment sections lit up with hashtags, Jars Jania built, this and jar wrenches over whispers. But Jania didn't change. She still showed up to the garage every Saturday, still worked beside her uncle, still wiped her hands on the same old rag tucked into her jeans. Shaq visited less often now, not because he was gone, but because he wanted her to stand on her own. And she did. During a podcast interview, when asked how she became the face of a national movement, she simply said, "By being underestimated long enough to become unstoppable." She wasn't just a student anymore. She was a speaker, a mentor, a symbol. Girls across the country, especially the ones who felt invisible, started emailing her for advice. And yet she never missed a chance to get her hands dirty. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled outside, she stood at her old workbench in the garage. The smell of oil, rubber, and pine-scented air fresheners filled the room. She was rebuilding a busted transmission, sleeves rolled up, music playing low. That's when Shaq walked in. He didn't say much, just leaned in the doorway, watching with a smile. Finally, he spoke. "You turned a curse into a calling," he said. "Proud of you, kid. You're family now." She looked up, wiped her forehead, and grinned. "You always were." Just then, her uncle wheeled in a new sign, wooden, hand-painted, letters carved deep like scars. She read it, slowly. "Let them laugh, then let them watch." It hit her like a punch to the chest, because it was everything. The journey, the doubt, the hate, the rise. She took a screwdriver, climbed the short ladder, and screwed it into place herself, right above her workbench where her story had begun. Down the road, people whispered that Tyson had quietly transferred to another